It's Eve 2020 on June 3rd. This is Matterall. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Before we start today, I'm going to actually do something that I always forget to do at the end of the show, and that is ask for your support for Talking in Stations, specifically for Matterall at Talking in Stations, by going to patreon.com/Matterall and becoming one of our sponsors on a monthly basis. The other thing you can do is give us a thumbs up or a rating or comment on our YouTube channel, or participate in Discord, and really just be visible. That's the kind of stuff that helps us gauge if what we're doing is worthwhile. And that's really important. As you know, if you're an Eve player, you have goals, and you keep setting goals and moving them a little forward, and that's what keeps you playing a game like this for over 10 years. The reason that TIS has been around for it's been around 5 years, is because we've set goals and we've achieved them, and we continue to stretch goals and achieve those, and all that is because of you guys. So if you could give us thumbs up, rate us, participate in Discord, TIS, and of course support us through Patreon and visit our YouTube channel, stuff like that. All right, thank you. Now let's get on with EVE Online and some news. Okay, looking at the most violent systems in the last 24 hours, Empire Space is... Oh, this is interesting. It is Lone Trek with over 2,000 kills in one 24-hour cycle. That's a lot. The Forge is nearly 2,000. It's at 1,800. And St. Zone is way down in about 1,300 territory. Now, this is interesting because we have the Forge, Sync, Liaison, and Domain in second, third, and fourth place, respectively. Those are all high-sec areas, but they probably have invasions going through them, which has made them have some systems that were essentially lawless. All the security measures of Crime Watch are dropped when they're invaded fully. So you're seeing those pick up activity where there was not a lot of activity before. I'm thinking specifically of Sync Liaison. And it's interesting to see how much this list has changed since invasions began. So we know they're working as intended to kind of give some diversity to the places that you can go to actually have some fun. Nick, you're in here with me, and you make a good point. You want to say that? Or you were in here with me? Oh, I'm alone. All right. Well, Nick says top 6 high sec, more kills than top 10 in null. That's a fascinating statistic. Take that in for a second.
My apologies for dropping out there.
No, I should have noticed. You're a viewer base of 1, but 1 really important viewer. But how did you get that number? That's really impressive.
Well, just peeking at the Empire Vice nullsec and looking at the top 10, and then looking over at the Empire side, that really actually surprised me. I didn't expect to see that much, out of the high sec ship kills.
Yeah, and I used to be able to say, well, those are new players and they're just blowing up to each other. And but no, that's not really what's going on anymore, because we've seen the base, we've seen the normal. A few months ago, you could easily see there was more activity in nullsec than there was Empire Space, but now that's totally flipped on its head, which tells you something, because these are PvP kills. These are not PvE kills. That's wild. And I think that's going to be an interesting thing to look at in a few months after invasions have been around for a little while. Okay, not invasions, but the third phase of invasions, which is where they take over the systems in a more permanent way and lower the security, allowing players to fight each other, or to fight the alien invaders, we'll call them, the Triglavians, or fight for the local authorities, the Eden Calm. So lots of different things that you can do there. I think the reason I bring up Eden Calm and Triglavians is because they can actually kill you and pod you, so they're probably adding to this list. Okay, most violent systems. We're talking about systems here, not regions. In the last 24 hours, 1DQ. Expect that to heat up, I think, as this war gets going. Only 173 there in the last day. It's still the quiet before the storm. In Cloud Ring, you have F7C TAC with 226. And then in Syndicate, we haven't seen Syndicate in a while. That's kind of a... No one can own Syndicate, so there's a lot of roaming that goes on and colliding. And a system of VV TAC VCR, 170. And for good measure, in fourth place, Eaton's Mother has 110 ships destroyed in the last 24 hours. The system is JTAC ZY. All right, we're starting to see some things heat up in Hophib. That is Iridia on the border of Fountain. That will be the staging ground of one of the vectors of attack going into Fountain. I believe Horde moved there. So look for that. That's home staging for Horde's invasion, basically. 38 ships died with 60 pods. That's probably people arriving with their ships and then using the pod express or the underground express, where you self-destruct your pod in a station and you wake up back in your home system, able to climb into a new ship and fly yourself back to Hophib. And that's how you would move multiple ships. So that is a staging for Horde, at least, and probably other groups as well, as they attack Fountain. And that will commence probably on Monday. I don't think there are any fleets on Sunday. Sunday is the last day of peace. So we'll see what happens there. And that's in the last 3 hours. So 38 in the last 3 hours. Also, you have some activity in Rancer and Nenamela, both systems that we are accustomed to seeing. Rancer being an ancient pirate haven. Flying through there will get you killed normally unless you're prepared. But in the last 24 hours, we have 700 ships destroyed in Nenamela. That's Black Rise. That dwarfs Tama, which was only at 310. And again, Rancer at 180. Tama and Rancer being pirate areas. Okay, most violent systems in HiSec. G tops the list for the last 24 hours. And that is normal. Narja, also relatively normal. 323 ships destroyed there. Jita had 511. And then Coaster in Essence. And Coaster is actually a beginning system. So occasionally that will make the top 10. And that is because of new players. So let's look at some SOV changes. We reviewed these just yesterday, but basically you see Conifers taking over some territory as Pure Blind vacates. Either the people that were attacking there are gone, or the people that were defending there are gone, and they drop out. You see Dracaris drops 4 systems. Let's have a look at that. That's not a big deal. They're probably dropping it from... I don't know if I hit Dracaris. Let's try that again. We'll just go there, and there we go. Okay, so these are old systems in Fade that are being taken over by Summer Hall. This was vacated a long time ago, so it's just cleanup activity from the war between Northern Coalition and Dead Coalition. 7th Sanctum, let's have a look at them. They picked up 2 systems in Cloud Ring. I'll have to keep an eye on these guys. 7th Sanctum. We don't know much about them yet. That's their holding company, 7th Holding, and looks like their main corporation is Tactical Teabaggers, and Cobra Inc. has the most players. We'll have to look at what they do. I like to see new alliances forming and getting into the null game. We'd like to see more of that. And if this war can explode big groups, that would actually make it pretty interesting. Might see more biodiversity. Alliance movements in the last 7 days. That's how many people have come and gone from alliances. Let's look at the longer list. See if we can see any patterns. Again, a lot of the news that we're bringing you is a lull before massive fighting. So people are repositioning, getting their stuff into place, moving their characters into the right alliances and corporations. But once the war starts, we should see more meaningful information. I think the big news here is that Triumvirate looks like it has imploded again. I think that is probably the 8th time or 9th time it has been stripped down to under 200 members. The Commonwealth I'm not familiar with. Let's have a look. They looks like they doubled in size. Let's see where their corporations came from. The Wardens sound familiar. Orbiting Wrecking, the Wardens. Let's look at both these corporations. Nope, Commonwealth is new, and the Wardens sound familiar. Nope, they are new as well. It's a good name. Surprised it was available. Right, so this is the Commonwealth, and they are, let's see where they usually reside. It looks like they picked up new members. That's what gave them a big boost, but I don't see where they're, if they're on the board at all. Okay. Oh, I see. They actually lost 550. I'm going back to take a second look. What did I miss? Oh, I see. So they had a mesa here. So they picked up 500 members and then lost them. So let's look again and see who they actually lost right here. Light drummer was in Commonwealth. They took off. But they took 500 people with them, basically. Or 470. Big chunk. It's like half their group. That's a big corporation. Okay, going back, Pandemic Horde picks up 282 new members. That brings them to almost 11. Well, it brings them almost to 12,000. And Triumvirate down again to 157. Let's look at who left and where they went. Corporations that left were, so Bad Vibe, Tempest Theory. Let's look at Tempest and see if they've gone anywhere. No, maybe too early to see where they've gone. It takes 24 hours. Nope, these guys still show up as in. Where do these guys move? 702. Okay, so Lucidus Ordo went to Pandemic Legion. That was on the 2nd. On the 1st, you had Universal Luftwaffe. They went to Slice, Solaris, Chthonium. And those were the recent departures. You also had Hateful Intent, went to Hostile Intervention. Now, this is a group I think I wanted to look into. Yeah, Hostile Intervention. Putting together Nobler tier extracts. Hateful Intent. All right, we'll be looking for some activity out of these guys. Oh, terrible ticker named after disease HIV, but that's Hostile Intervention. H1NT. I guess they have a whole disease thing going. Okay. Yeah, so the thing about, oh, one more thing to look at is Viral Society. Looks like they lost 239, which is roughly 2/3 their size. But let's look at who that is and where they went. Wow, these guys have been through a lot of corps, as you can see. A lot of corps. Yeah, on the 3rd, they lost a bunch of corporations here, so it's not just one group. I think the biggest one is here, the Pooh Bears. Oh, these guys are former OSS. Well, it looks like a series of, and this is probably their logistics, Pooh Bear logistics. They're all still listed as viral. It's too early to look to see where these guys have gone. If anywhere, they might just be going independent or forming their own alliance, but they have departed from Viral Society or Virus. And Virus has gone from somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 to less than 200, less than 150. That's a big drop. Northern Coalition picks up some people, 180. Just out of curiosity, I want to see what's going on here. Well, NC has grown quite a bit. When I was an NC, there was an average of 1,000 players. That was a while ago. Now it's in the recent years, maybe the last 4 or 5 years, it's really averaged around 3,000. Now it's getting close to 4,000. They like to be selective, and certainly they're much smaller than Horde, much smaller than Goon Swarm or Karma Fleet or any of those groups. But they still try to attract some really great corporations. And I'm going to see original. Let's see who they picked up recently. They've picked up Red Guard. Red Guard. From Solar Fleet. Funny, Northern Coalition used to fight Solar Fleet, so that's interesting. These guys look Russian because they were in Darkness of Despair, which was a Russian coalition a Russian alliance that lived in, I want to say, Esoteria during the Halloween War. Remember, Russians won the Halloween War. They won that war. Sorry, they didn't win the war. They won that battle, BTAC R. And then somebody sabotaged them and they lost the war. But Hand of Despair, Southern Federation, Solar Fleet, these are all Russian alliances. You can see one of their original alliances is Red Alliance. So they picked up a Russian group there. Running with Wolves. These guys are... Let's have a look at their alliance history. Oh, they picked up a Tri group. Well, this was last month. That's why it didn't show up when we were looking at who left Triumvirate. Well, the leader of NC Dot, Vince Draken, has a relationship with Triumvirate that goes back to their original Triumvirate days. So that's not surprising. There might be old relationships there at work. Let's look at Remember the Fallen RFT. This looks like a soldiers corporation, like an actual soldiers corporation. Maybe wrong. I'll have a look at their history here. Wyso Sirius. Wow, it goes way back. I used to love that name, Wyso. That was like 2011, 2012? No, 2013. Yeah. They were part of N3. That was a long time ago, I think. Looks like they've bounced around, going through a lot of small alliances until they got into test in 2016. Then they joined the new Atlas, because that's not the old Atlas. That's 2017. It reformed. It didn't work out. And they bounced over to TNT, Tactical Narcotics Team, which has also been around a long time. They're part of the Imperium. And then went to Requiem Eternal. I think that was Russian. Anyway, jumped into Horde, and now they have surfaced up in Northern Coalition. And they just joined last month, a few days ago, about 8 days ago. So they've been around. That's Remember the Fallen. And now the Know Nothings Corporation. Let's look at them. Losecnia Schulpen. That's great. 2017 and snuffed out. These guys are probably pretty skilled. If you belong to Losecnia Schulpen or snuffed, you had a really good... They came out of Unspoken Alliance. Hog Hitman. Okay, that's more recent. And I think they probably looks like they went to Wormhole Space, and then they're surfacing in Northern Coalition. Really, their last alliance for this corporation was Hog Hitman. So it's neat to see them again. And that is the Know Nothings have surfaced in NC Dot. We'll go back one more. Oh, I like that name, Criterion. Kind of big. Criterion looks like the Purple Warriors. That would be Wrecking Crew down in Providence. That's who kind of runs that coalition. So that alliance belongs to XPL guy, mostly a whale hunter named Rocket X. These guys were a part of Hydra as well. It's an amazing winner of the Alliance tournament. Very skilled pilots. Looks like they hung out in 6th Empire. And Panic Attack in the Null Secnia Schulpen. And then that is more recent, right? Yeah, 3.8. So that was last year. So Null Secnia and then to Northern Coalition. All right, so this exercise to show you that Northern Coalition has almost 4,000 members, but the corporations that they recruit are corporations that have been around a while, have a ton of experience, probably have some very experienced pilots, and that's the kind of groups that join the alliance for Northern Coalition. One last check, Fraternity picking up 163, Get Off My Lawn losing 150. And Brave picks up 100 members. Look at Pandemic Legion picking up 100. Good for them. Now they're up to 2,300. That reminds you that there was 2 strategies at play. Pandemic Legion decided to stay small. This was a while ago, maybe 2 years ago. Northern Coalition decided to grow big. And the difference now is about 1,800 members between them. So that is interesting. All right, so those are the stats. Let's go to kills. Oof, that's an expensive Tartara from Wasted Potential. Was destroyed by Slice in Ethereum Reach and IRD. We got to look at that. That came out to 34 billion. Normally the big expensive part of these structures, because this is a mining complex, is in the rigs. And this is no exception. This had T2 rigs. And those things, again, can range from 10 to 20 billion. So T2 rigged, destroyed in Ethereum Reach. We had a Marshall get blown up from belonged to no value. It was killed by an NPC. So bad luck there. Must have walked away. And so NPCs can be rough these days. Was killed by a Striker. That's a Dead Space rogue drone. Took out a Marshall by itself. All right, and yesterday we had a freighter get destroyed in the Bleaklands. This was actually a jump freighter, a Nomad class, belonged to Viral Society in Huala. That was killed by dock workers. Another Asbel was destroyed, came out to 14 billion in Lone Trek in the system of Oima. And that was by the Calcutta Corporation, destroyed by Jita Holding Inc. Right, I like this, Elves Throne. That's a great name. In Iridia, he was destroyed by Losecnia. I think we covered him yesterday in the system of Or2. Yeah, I remember that system. Okay, so those are the over 10 billion kills. Let's see if there's anything interesting in the over 5. J-Space Naglfar was destroyed, belonged to Time Crit. That's normal for J-Space to have very expensive dreadnoughts because that's as big a ship as you can get in there. And Oh, Cruelier in Sync Liaison, that system, it's 0.4 system. It's up near Rancer, that basic grid. Rancer and Ignoiton and those places. So that was destroyed. That was a Sharon belonging to Guerrilla Gardening and killed by Get a Life. We have Dreads destroyed in J space, I believe. Different systems. Ooh, and an expensive Orca in, it's probably hauling stuff because it was killed in Nargia domain. Okay, let's go to timers, have a look there. This board we're going to get closely acquainted with. These are the timers, and we have it geared to, well, no wonder it looks busy. It's not filtered, so let's change that to iHub. That looks more like it. So we only have about 6 iHubs. But what's important about this is right now we're in that lull. Nothing's happening yet. But in the next week, this timer board is going to start to fill up because this entire war is going to be over iHubs, not structures. So when the Imperium says, come and get us, we have so many keep stars, not going to matter. Because this war is not about destroying those keep stars. It's about vacating, making them vacant. And so all that is going to depend on defensive iHubs or defensive ratings. What is it called? Strategic defensive rating, I think. And that is determined by the iHubs. So these iHubs, industrial, they're called, infrastructure hubs, are critical to the survivability of all structures. So they're always the first thing to go. And once they go, they really diminish a system's value for the people who live in it. It's not easy to mine anymore. It's not easy to rat anymore. A lot of the bonuses that you get are gone. And so that chases people away who are there for the money. And so you're going to end up seeing a lot of those structures destroyed. Now, either they're going to be destroyed in Delve and in Fountain, or they're going to be destroyed in Esoteria and Test Space, Catch, Fate the Bolus, all the way down to, or Impasse. So you're going to see them destroyed on either side. We don't know who's going to be on the offensive. We do know that the Imperium has said, come and get us in their home, and they've retreated their ships to home, or they've strategically redeployed backwards to Fountain and to Delve. So I think they're expecting the invasion. And you're going to probably see iHubs attacked in those areas, probably starting with Aquarius and Fountain. Yes, Activity Defense Multiplier, ADMs. I don't know why that slipped my mind. So ADMs are determined by the iHub. If the iHub is destroyed, the ADMs fall to 0, which means it's a lot easier to destroy structures. And so again, the keep stars are strategic points for your ships to deploy from, but that's not what wins a war when you're fighting the long-term war. Starvation, disrupted logistics. Basically, when a player stops having fun, they look for something else to do, and that's probably what you're going to see this war fought over, is the oppression of the opponent's ability to have some fun. So this is something that we're going to get acquainted with in the next few weeks. Okay, yesterday, well, let's get the scans. Yesterday I was watching this Ecology of New Eden. I don't know if you guys saw that. Let's actually change that up. By the way, we're not having the war update. This is news right now. We're just talking about stuff. But now we're going to shift gears. To the Ecology of New Eden. Let's see if we can make that bigger. I don't know if you caught this yesterday. It's worth a listen. You can go back to twitch.tv and go to CCP TV or CCP and look at their videos and then check this out, because this is basically a small presentation from Ratati and CCP Psych. They had, looks like, a player character named Jadic talking about the ecology. And I think what this was is an exercise in showing you that they have not forgotten about ecology. I don't think they had anything to present that's new or any urgency necessarily to the presentation on trying to get anything done. It was mostly a reminder that things are happening, and it was a Q&A session. So if you didn't catch it, it's worth it. I would, if you're interested in botting and how they took on botting, the first 30 minutes are interesting for that. But if you're interested in what's going to happen, I would actually skip to the last 60 minutes. Sorry, the 60-minute mark. At that point, they really start talking about some of the future stuff as much as they can, and it's not much. I have some notes here. I'll go over them. One of the things that I guess the big takeaways from this thing was, sorry, my notes are flying all over the place. There was a lot of interesting things at the end, but they were in the little details. And I have to say it was a little hard to listen to because they beat around the bush so much that it took a while to figure out what they were even talking about. So it wasn't the best presentation to come away with knowing what they were going to do. But the ecosystem team, which is CCP Ratati, takes care of the meta changes, and they focus on keeping the cadence of changes. So that means ship changes, module changes, everything that keeps the game in balance. There's a way that he said it that was interesting. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, the role and purpose of all the things in the game. That's what they're in charge of. Remember that. The role and the purpose of everything in the game is the purview of the ecology team. So that's interesting. Another thing that was revealed there on a high level was that the idea of a roadmap is not really what it used to be. A roadmap used to say, this is our vision, this is where we're going, here are the next few steps. So that's what the roadmap was. But now it's not really like that anymore. I think their strategy is to have a whole range of roadmaps. They have like 3 or 4 maybe directions that they're going at the same time, and a list of features that they can hit, or new features they can develop, or features they can fix, and then they weigh out which ones would be the ones to take on next. So they mentioned during the show, for instance, that PI could be improved, it could be scrapped and restarted, but what they're opting to do instead is make that a lower priority and not deal with it for a while. So that's how that works. So that's interesting. So the idea, this is a big deal last summer, is like, where's the roadmap? Where's the roadmap? We want to know where we're going. We want to know this game has more to give. And they've just said like, well, roadmap is not really realistic anymore. It's not what games do anymore. It's a different development style. They don't entice you with the future. They want to instead just give you an idea of what the priorities are in the general direction, which is that they're going to fix the ecology and make materials more scarce, make price higher. There's going to be a bunch of pain involved for people who have become accustomed to making a lot of money or achieving their goals with the money they earn in the game. So some of those people are going to be slowed down. At the same time, all the things that they have are going to increase in value because they will be harder to get for everyone. And you need to keep that in mind as we go to war here in a week or a few days, because the replenishing of ships, especially capital ships, is going to be harder than it was before. It's going to cost more. Now, all these groups have stockpiles of minerals, so they will last a while if they want. But this war of attrition is something that they're all going to feel a little more than they would have felt it 6 months ago. Okay, so some of the things that they said, the ecosystem team, were they want to make sure they keep up the cadence, the rapid changes to the game, which is what you've been seeing since the beginning of the year. Actually, since October, since Vegas, where they announced that team. So they want to keep that. That's their priority. They're going to make some changes to Triglavian ships. They're going to make some changes to command ships. They're going to make some changes to... there's going to be basically the final... I think it's going to be the final change to super capitals. So final nerfs or final adjustments to them. Don't know what that's going to look like. And then they said they're going to have a final theoretical component. And I think what they're talking about there, see how vague it was? I think what they're talking about there is an adjustment to the scarcity that they're trying to produce. And so what that final component is probably is something that does dynamic harvesting changes. So that is one of the things they wanted to do. If you remember with Ecology, they had 3 steps to it. If I remember correctly, the first one was to just clamp down on where stuff was available. The second thing was to reduce the amount of, say, minerals that you got out of ore. But the third one was, they would make it more scarce per region. So first of all, they damped everything down. So they kind of nerfed how much you could get out of minerals and where they were available. The second thing they did is move them around so that you couldn't get certain minerals in certain places, like low ores couldn't be found in nullsec anymore, wormholes, that sort of thing. And that really thrashed a lot of players. But the third thing they wanted to get to after the first 2 was to make it a dynamic system that would change. And so we can only speculate what that actually means. A dynamic system is something like planetary interaction. We call it PI, where when you colonize a planet with your excavators or extractors, that you have to scan the planet and see where the high volume areas are and where the low volume areas are. And so then you put your extractors in the high area so that you're not wasting your time with those extractors. And I think that is an example of a dynamic range, because that changes over time. So your extractors might be sitting on a really nice, on the heat map, red area that has a lot of minerals in it. But then after 2 weeks, that seems to have diminished to a very normal rate, and a hot spot is somewhere else on the planet. So that's a dynamic change. I think those are called negative feedbacks mechanisms, and I think that's what they're going to introduce. So that was something that we were speculating on last night. So the point is, the ecosystem team is going to move into their final theoretical component. And that final theoretical component is probably something that is a dynamic system. So a dynamic system to harvesting would probably look something like you can either tune moons so that if a moon were to give you 4 ingredients, that you could tune it to give you more of a low end and less of a high end, or the other way around. You could sharpen the moon to give you a lot of high end, but very little low end. That's the kind of dynamic system. You would have to tune your lasers to give you more of a certain thing. That's one way of doing it. Another way is that resources get depleted over time. Those kinds of things. So we'll look to see what they do, and that's coming in the future. We think all they said is final theoretical component, but earlier they had said they wanted harvesting to become a dynamic system. So we're putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with our own theory. Okay, so they did also say there were big changes coming, and they are going to ruffle some feathers, but it has potential upsides. And that falls right into place with what we're talking about. They also said they would have some changes to ESS. This is not something I'm that familiar with, but let's see here. ESS is the Encounter Surveillance System. And what that does is it's a module that you put down. It's a temporary module that you put down. and it increases your income as you rat, basically, by 5%. But what you're doing for that 5% is you're putting down a place where all the money is going as you're making it, which means that it's like a little treasure chest, and you're running around ratting, and that treasure chest is sitting there filling up with the money that you're earning. But the problem is that somebody can come and grab that and run off with it. So you kind of need to defend it or look in on it. You can't leave it there overnight, or somebody might stumble upon it and take all the money inside of it. That's how it works now. So there are going to be some changes to this, and it looks like I couldn't understand what they were saying, but multiple incomes coming up from systems. So maybe the ESS will collect from multiple systems, possibly multiple players. This is theorizing, by the way. It's not what they said. But one thing they did say is that it will not be a deployable, it will be a permanent thing. So this may be part of a new structure that allows people to, maybe a structure that's much bigger than ESS, a structure that is constellation-wide. So if you or your corporation is ratting, then you're filling up that structure with, let's go back and do that again. You're filling up that structure with money, and that structure can be taken out, and or it can be, thieves can come and break into that structure and take some of the money. There might be some gameplay they're experimenting with there, but the only thing we know is that there will be changes to the encounter surveillance system. And then finally, there was an interesting thing here. Well, I'll tell you what, this other thing was, they talked about the market a little bit, and they made some market changes where they increased the taxes on changing your order. So if you were to enter in an order of 1 billion ISK to sell a thing or to buy a thing, and you said, wait, that's way overpriced, I need it to be 500 million, you're going to take a huge tax hit for that. So what that does is it makes people put the order where they actually need it, and it sits longer so they don't lose money on moving the order number around. And that slows down the market. So there was speculation that the market was hurt by these changes. And Ratati reported that there were no people hurt, and that the market changes only hurt the intended targets, which were bots. Kind of a bold statement, and really encouraging if accurate, but it looks like the bots have been chased out of the market, or at least diminished quite a bit, and the market activity has recovered and is doing as well as it was before. So another thing they talked about was the, and it's a companion to the marketplace, is the HyperNet relay. I don't know if you guys remember, in December, was it December or November, the HyperNet relay was put out there, and it's essentially a lottery system. And the first thing they said was that it's fallen short on the usage. They were hoping there would be more usage. So they've, even though it's doing what it's supposed to do, which is taking ISK out of the game, because it takes 5% basically of Plex through hypercores. You convert Plex to hypercores, and hypercores are what fuel the lotteries that you put together. So 5% in hypercores and 5% in straight taxes. So you're losing 10% on the item that you're putting up to bid. So what they experimented with was to put that tax level a lot lower. In other words, wipe out the actual tax. So you're only paying 5% through hypercores. So there's no tax, just hypercore. And they did that for a limited time, and the orders jumped up by 3 times normal. But nobody came to buy. Nobody above average came to buy. So in other words, they attracted sellers with the negative 5% tax, but they didn't attract any buyers. And so they think the problem with the buyers is that it's not easy to surface the kind of stuff you're interested in. So they're looking at UX improvements. They're looking at browsing, ways of browsing to find the things that you're interested in, or to feature, to surface really, really interesting items, because nobody wants to see a a skill injector. What they want this place to be, the HyperNet is supposed to be a boutique that you walk into and you window shop. In other words, you look at the items that are super rare and expensive. You can't buy them, but you can look at them and appreciate them. So it's almost like a showcase of items that you can't afford. And then when you feel wealthy enough, you might participate. Who knows? But that's the idea. That's the feeling they want. And that's the alternative to the marketplace. So we'll see what they do with UI improvements to fix that. Okay, so that was so check that out. Everything I've discussed in the last few minutes was the Ecology of New Eden presentation given by Ratati and Psych. And you can find that on CCP's TV. It's a quiet day here. I'm kind of tired of talking. All right, let's go to see what we can find out about. Well, actually, well, let's see. Let me just change this here. We'll do that because it's going to be varied. So it looks like there's some skin, Starline Majestic skin out for, looks like these will be gone on July 11th. If you're interested in these, that is a Leviathan Titan there in the background. It's funny, I think I saw this skin on CCP Convict's Leviathan as he jumped into last Tuesday's, actually it was like 10 days ago, the birthday bash for Chappie. There was a Leviathan in it supplied by CCP, and I think it had this skin on it. So yeah, if you see that. Yeah, these are red, white, and blue. I can't tell. Funny. Okay, so there's those skins. All right, let's have a look. Sorry, Nick, do you have something?
Well, it was just reference the World War Chappie. On the 11th, they announced is going to be his last day in the game, and they're basically going to do a redo of the same thing in Tanudin.
So they did put a date to it. Our last podcast had Chappie, and he said this was going to happen. We didn't know when it would be.
On the ecosystem, they mentioned the 11th and at an earlier time.
Right. Because the last one was at evening time for Pacific, which made it very difficult for Europeans to show up. So this next one sounds like it'll be a lot easier for people to show up. So we'll see how many people show up there. We'll try to cover it live.
If I remember correctly, they said 1800, but I could be off an hour either way on that.
That totally makes sense. 1800 is prime time for EVE Online, as it is now, because that is basically European evening, 6 p.m. So European players are off work at that point. But the reason that's important is because European evening comes before US evening, like 5 hours before. And so what happens is if something is going on at 1800 and it becomes big, it can lead into US time zone, which means more players can join in. So 1800 has always been prime time for EVE Online. That may shift with Chinese players, Korean players. As they grow, there may be a shift on what EVE's prime time is. But right now is basically Western prime time, which is European time, prime time, 6 p.m. Yikes. 1 second. Every day. Okay. Let's see if we can hit some war update news. I have some stuff. I don't know if it's public yet, so I'm going to actually learn along with you guys what's public and what's not. Time for a war update. I think the place to go would be Our Eve has a lot of stuff, too much stuff sometimes, but we'll go there. Yeah, this came out by, I think it was made by a pilot in Snuff, or made of him, for him. He's one of the characters on it. We'll play it and turn the volume down. But this is a little meme. It was kind of funny. The reason I'm playing it is because it was handed to me by Manfred Sidious, I think, of Test. For those who don't know, Manfred Sidious is Manny, also long-time legend of EVE Online. He played with AAA. His Corporation Havoc was, one of the big movers in 2000, the last decade, basically. He went on to PL, and he's the one that led PL in the short-lived Fountain War, because they bailed out pretty quick on that. And he ended up, there he is, being instrumental in BTAC-R. And after BTAC-R, he joined, I think he resurfaced later as Rogue Drone's general, basically their main general. He did an amazing job defending the drone regions against an attack from Guardians of the Galaxies or Dead Coalition. They basically tried to put a Keepstar into drone lens. And so there's a huge fight, lasted hours, where drones defended by reshipping and reshipping and reshipping. He was helped a lot by Pfeiffer of BOPE. And so they defended drones. That was one of the best fights, I think, in recent history. That and UALX, to me, are some of the most interesting fights that EVE has produced. X47 wasn't that interesting, but it was consequential. 9TAC G also wasn't that interesting, but it was consequential. It was the biggest fight in EVE's history. But if you want an interesting fight, look at UALX. That was an interesting fight. Also, the battle for, let's see where it was. It was on the tip of, I want to say Paragon. It could have been MTO. Not sure if it was MTO, but it could have been MTO. That was an amazing fight. Let's look at it on the actual, and here's why. We want to see this on the universal map. There it is, and as I back out, I'll probably lose it. Yep. This jump here, you can see this long jump from this region here. I don't know if you can see my mouse. I think you can. I can see it on screen. This is like Northern Territory, Branch and Venal and all that, and it jumps all the way past these areas here, which are exclusive to CCP, so nobody can fly through there. So it jumps right through them all the way over to the east side of the map. It's a gigantic, gigantic jump. And this is a system where they planted a Keepstar, and they brought their super fleet with it. So you had a Keepstar that was being anchored, and you had Titans defending it, and it was a huge gamble on the part of Sort Dragon and Dead Coalition at the time, called GOTG, Guardians of the Galaxy. And it was a huge fight, and really Manfred Sidious and Pfeiffer and the other guys from that coalition just defended their hearts out. It took like 6 hours, and they ended up destroying that forward operating base. Now, keep in mind, they dropped a Keepstar. The Keepstar is destroyed. Now, you've got a bunch of supers sitting there without the protection of Tether, without the protection of a Keepstar. And that was a really dramatic moment. But Sort Dragon managed to get his capital ships out and move them back. It was a defeat for sure. And that was a great fight. We actually had talking in stations dedicated to that fight, and we had 4 of the generals from drone regions on there, and we talked to them. So Manfred Sidious was one of those. He's also a really great theorist. He came up with some of the game-winning, but also game-breaking doctrines, such as slow cats and that kind of thing. And that was where you took ships, basically carriers, and they repaired each other in a web of repair, which was not unusual at the time. But what was unusual is taking all the drones and assigning them to one FC, and the FC would then use all that drone alpha to just wipe out battleships 1 second after another. It was a dramatic change. So it was an undefeatable doctrine and really ruled for a while. That was when he was in Pandemic Legion. So anyway, little cartoon. That's not really about the war, but that's more about propaganda as people gear up. This Dirk McGurk sent me, which is kind of funny. That's Briskerball and Matani strapped over some real life stuff that happened. I think a couple came out of their house to defend their house with guns as protesters were marching by. Okay, that's... did I pass the... I did pass it. Sorry, I didn't pass it. It's still up ahead here. If I can't find it all, here's that. No, that's not it. This is all propaganda. I don't see any real information here. There was something that came out. I guess I'll find it on my own. It's in our Discord. And it is basically... This is the only real piece of news that I've stumbled upon today. Let's see if I can grab it. Eve Local, and wow, a lot of talking going on Eve Local on Talking in Stations Discord. Okay, so I'll have to get it from my personal files as somebody sent it to me, so that's where it's at. Here we go. This is Fire Coalition's State of the Alliance. And it is, if you go to about 13 minutes in, you'll hear the English version, not American English, so you can understand it. But the first 13 minutes are the Russian version, since Fire Coalition is a Russian coalition. And unsurprising, they are going to join the war effort on the side of Legacy. Legacy has been their ally for the last few years and has essentially allowed them to... I think this is what is said on the English version, that we're going to back Legacy because Legacy has allowed us to provide, or has allowed us to win all the wars that we've won. So they're going to stick with Legacy. They're getting involved in this war. It's going to happen. We already heard that Fraternity is joining the war as well on the side of PanFam to keep PandaFam together at least one more time. What is interesting is the state of another Legacy ally called Army of Mango, Chinese group, that does not like Fraternity and will not blue them under any circumstances, at least any present circumstances. So that created an interesting situation where you might have two Chinese alliances in the same theater of action that don't like each other. Fraternity said they will blue Army of Mango, so they won't shoot them initially. But Army of Mango reserves the right to shoot Fraternity. So that's an interesting wrench in the plans. It was later clarified that Army of Mango will not blue Fraternity, but they won't initiate an attack on Fraternity either. But I've also heard that Army of Mango is not going to participate in this war, which is a big development. So I'm not sure if that last one is true. I haven't confirmed it with Army of Mango themselves. But I have seen writing that Army of Mango won't attack Fraternity first, but if they are attacked by Fraternity, they will retaliate. So it's kind of a don't shoot first policy. So that's interesting as far as legacy allies. But for now, Fire Coalition, which is a legacy ally, is committed to the war, and you will see them out there fighting. I think they can fill up 1 or 2 full fleets of 250 members, but that means that everybody's active and everybody's having a good time. Those numbers may go down to 1 fleet of 250. It could go down to 100 members. Who knows how powerful Fire Coalition is? They'll have to show us in the next few weeks. Yeah, so I'll just end with this, that if you are looking for interesting aspects of this war, look for Army of Mango and what they decide their behavior is going to be. Are they diplomatically vulnerable to switch sides and join the Imperium and help defend? That would be a boost. That would hurt legacy. But that would take some really interesting diplomatic moments. So look for that. Look for Horde moving now into Hopib. That is Iridia, but it's on the border of Fountain, so it's going to be a slugfest. That's Lower Fountain. Let's show you where that is, just so you can visualize it. This is Iridia here in this middle area, and this is Hopib here. I'll zoom in. So Fountain is this oval region here that sits on the west. And down here is Iridia, connected to Empire space, because it is Empire space. It's Amarian space. And Hopib here is where a lot of places, it's where a lot of attacks start. This is where Nulli Segunda parked it for the Fountain War, basically. They were going after Test in Fountain. And is that right? Yeah, they were going after Test in Fountain, and they started out in Hopib. I think I still have some battle cruisers there, now that I think about it. I should go check those out. And also in CDOT, this is where they launched their attacks on Fatal Ascension when they were part of the Imperium. So this Hopib is always a place where you're going to have incursions into Fountain, big incursions going from. And that's no exception this time around. So Hopib is the first staging ground that we're seeing. It doesn't attack J5, which is right up here, I believe, here. This is like, here's J5. It goes into the northern parts of the map. And that's where the Imperium in the form of initiative as well retreated to. They came to this, I say retreat, but I mean they moved there. So it was a good retreat. It was a smart retreat, but it was retreating, moving backwards. I don't mean they were cowards or anything, but yeah. So they retreated to J5A, and that's where they fortified. They have a keep star there. It's the first keep star in Fountain, belonged to the culture, but when this area was essentially sold off to the Imperium, the keep star came with it. So they had J5A. Keep star has been there a while. And Fountain and Bastion, I think, moved into Fountain to kind of populate it. So they moved out of Delve. And this gave Initiative a lot of room to expand into the northern areas where they've been kicking around a lot, fighting Northern Coalition. So I think Initiative usually resides in Fountain these days, but they used to hang out in Syndicate and project from there. And again, they project up north to these areas where they can get fights from the former Dead Coalition, or at one point Horde lived in that area in Pureblind or Fade. Triumvirate lived there, CO2, when it was reconstituting. And NC. and PL were over here, not far behind. So every once in a while, NC. would come through Lowsec and pound the Initiative in Syndicate, taking over their moons. And then the Initiative would come back. Then the Northern Coalition would go back to the north, and the Initiative would reconquer their moons pretty quick. And they really have been battling. They've been battling Snuff for some structures and some territory. When Snuff reconstituted recently, that's kind of what the grumblings early on a few weeks ago were about. And to learn more on that, we had a show with the snuff leader Haiwantu and Pando from Initiative, and they talked about it. But we had Villy there in Kilobee as well, and it turned into a basically a kind of a heated discussion about this pending war that's coming. So it became more than just about the snuff incursions and stuff. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but Hop-Hib is the new staging ground, so look at that. So a couple interesting areas to look at. We've talked plenty about Test because Test is here and they give us information. Villy shows up a lot and tells us what's going on. They're pretty open about their plans. So that's why you've been hearing a lot about Test. The Imperium doesn't give away any plans or come onto our show except in the form of some people that work for INN, but they don't actually say very much. And Pando, who's one of the few FCs on the Imperium that's willing to show up and talk about what's going on. So if it feels like we're giving a lot of information about one side, it's because that side actually comes here to talk to us. The other side has their own media operation, the Imperium, and that's what they intend to use when they give out information. So don't blame us. It's not on us. Another thing to look at is the numbers. That's going to be critical. And I think the Imperium is huge, right? When we look at it, they have at least 3,000 to 4,000 players. And that's not characters, that's players. And if they get active and bring in more people, you're going to see a lot more. People being activated. It might get up to 5, who knows, maybe 6,000 players. That's a lot of players for one side. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, so now here's what I didn't know. I didn't know how many players were on the other side. And so I was actually looking at numbers. And one of the things that cracked me up about this, let's go back to, I don't know if I can show you, but that Star Wars thing that Manny sent over that we were looking at, that was pretty interesting because you could see how many different logos of different alliances were coming at the Imperium. And I was kind of surprised at how many logos were up there. So that adds up to a lot of people. And I think Villy said that they have a lot more members marching on Imperium than Imperium have to defend. So it is going to be a very interesting war if the numbers are on the side of the invaders. Which is possible. Yeah, so let me read some comments. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and take your questions, and then we'll see what's on. Another thing, by the way, to think about is Blackout really hurt the Imperium, but it also hurt Horde. It also hurt Test. They all lost over the period of the last 6 months, actually now a period of a year, because that started in June, let's say. They've lost 20 to 25% of their group, which is no small amount. So these guys aren't as big as they were before. Now, this may also have hurt Northern Coalition and other groups, I'm not sure. But it seems to me that a lot of the people that were dissatisfied with the Blackout and the changes that happened to nerf Rorquals were not the kind of players that groups like NC. Would have. They were more the kind of players that resided in areas like Imperium, Legacy, and Horde. So it would be interesting to see if NC actually survived the Blackout better than these other groups. Because you are very biased, Matterall, says Curomancer. I'll take that criticism, but that's the same criticism I heard from PL and NC. When I was the head of INN, and I was talking in stations there, and I was battling it out with ProGod and Kilobee at the same time about putting out an ad that apparently attacked casinos. That was a heated exchange. And I sat there and took the heat and basically said, no, we don't apologize. We don't apologize for that article. That article was vetted and it was correct. And, it was a theory, but, yeah, I fought these fight before, but I was on the side of the Imperium at that point. Not on the side of the Imperium, but I was working for them. But I was always looking at the same thing. Sure, there's bias. Absolutely, there's bias in every player in EVE Online, because every player in EVE Online has a different idea of what the game should be like. And a lot of times that bias will come out. But I'm always looking at the game for its interest. And I'm looking at the game to kind of filter out some of the BS that people are being sold to motivate them to play, right? It's natural that you motivate players to play with narratives and with rhetoric and with, arrogance and whatever else. It's natural to do that. It's just something that turns me off, and I point it out. Let's see. You guys have any questions? By the way, one thing you will always notice about me and talking in stations, if we are biased, we are usually biased towards the underdog. And that's always been the case. The amount of fighting I did with Pandemic Legion, including Grath, who yelled at me quite a bit, when Imperium was basically being evicted from the north. Like, you guys have to understand that a lot of Goon Swarm, or a lot of big members of Goon Swarm, were taking off and talking about the Imperium and how bad it was and all this stuff. And if you looked around when the Imperium was having a tough time, and you looked around and you said, who are Imperium friends? Those are the guys that are with us. I was there. I was there at the very top, at the front lines of the media fight, fighting off my own alliance, Northern Coalition, taking a ton of damage, being a member of Northern Coalition, just because I was trying to put news out through INN way back in World War B. So this is like not new to me to take heat, me personally, but the organization should be kept separate, because half our staff is Imperium, and they're great people. Again, we try just to like go for the underdog, and that means the gameplay underdog, that means the war underdog, and all this other stuff. So we are totally open to letting you guys, that means the Imperium or the Legacy or Horde, talk to each other on the show, as long as it stays respectful and informative. That's what we're after. And if they don't want to, we'll do it for them, and we'll do the best job that we can. And so thanks for watching. I think that's it, right? Do we have anything else? Oh, thanks, guys. Appreciate the compliments here. I'm seriously not fishing for compliments, but always nice, because they keep morale up. Is Imperium technically an underdog at the moment? I don't know who the underdog is, right? I only judge it by rhetoric, so they don't sound like an underdog. But I really don't know how many people are going to show up during this war yet. We'll see that better on Sunday. But even Sunday, it really depends on boots on the ground, how many players are logging in to fly in these fleets. And it could be that Imperium is just swarmed, which would be ironic, because they're the bees. It could be that they still are the masters of the universe. We don't know yet. What we do know is the last military deployment that Imperium did, they had 1,000 Titans in the north. That's not an underdog. So I suppose we'll start there. If those guys are still around and still have 1,000 Titans, maybe by now they have 1,200 Titans. That's it's not an underdog. So I'll be looking for the underdog to pull out some surprises. Always going for the little guy. Okay, so that's it for today. Thanks for hanging out with us, and I appreciate your comments. Give us comments in TIS Discord or on YouTube or any of that kind of stuff. Let us know where you're at. Don't bother telling us we're good or bad, on the side of the war, because we're just going to ignore that. But if you want more coverage, if you want more explanation on a certain thing, that's the kind of stuff we're looking for, and we're happy to respond to those kinds of things. All right, let's have a look and see if we can rate anybody. This is always the hard part. All right, Tobiah Cowboy. Let's say hi to him. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out. And we will see you. We might do a show on Saturday. If you guys want it, let me know. X up if you want a show on Saturday. Alpha, I would go to Alpha, except Alpha's broadcasting in Russian. But yeah, CCP Alpha might still be on. Except if you want to see a Saturday show, since we're heading into a busy weekend, and I may show up with some friends and have another conversation. All right, that's pretty good. Thank you for Xing up. All right, enjoy Tamiya Cowboy. And we'll see you guys, looks like tomorrow.